What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another Golden Record track breakdown, and today we are talking all about Foo's Flower Shop. Now, this is the most lo-fi chill track on the entire album, and is definitely the closest to what the original scope of the Golden Record was going to be, back when it was going to just be a little lo-fi EP. Now, for some background on this track, I know I've talked about it on social media before, but if you're unfamiliar, I am heavily influenced by a producer by the name of Nujabes. If you're unfamiliar with his work, you need to be familiar with his work, but he's produced 2 albums in his time. He was unfortunately taken from us far too soon in a tragic car accident. However, he was probably most famously known for being the creator, really, of lo-fi hip-hop and for his work on an anime called Samurai Champloo. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what the story of that anime is, basically, there are these 3 characters who are brought together by chance or fate, and they end up going on quite an epic journey together where they find out more about each other and themselves internally. And one of the characters in that show, her name is Foo, and the entire time she's looking for the samurai who smells of sunflowers. And so my kind of idea is that, with this track, is at the end of the series, you don't necessarily get a clear-cut ending, which I'm not, against, but you don't get a clear-cut ending of what makes, what the story becomes, where they go from at the end of it all. And so this was sort of my little take on kind of like what a potential happily ever after might have been for that storyline. So somewhere in the future, Foo has opened up her own flower shop where she gets to bring happiness and joy to people on a regular occasion. So with all that said, let's go ahead and dive into Ableton and see what's happening inside of the production of this thing. Alright, so right off the top in Ableton, you can see that there aren't actually too many different components to this. As far as our melodic section goes, we have our main loop, this moon guitar out of Labs. We've talked about Labs a lot, another great example of their work. And then this flute that came out of the Captain plugins. And then for our rhythm section, we have our drums and percussives, and then we have this atmospheric section. And the reason for sort of the simplicity is twofold. One, in a lo-fi track, you don't need to have a whole bunch of unnecessary complications. In fact, sometimes, more often than not, simpler is better. But then as well is that this is the second track to make it out of the Freestyle Friday world and come into the full world of the album. And really the biggest difference in taking it out of Freestyle Friday and more into a full-fledged album track was more of this percussive elements in here just to add some more ear candy, and then we fleshed out the atmospheric section just a little bit more. So the river, the ambiance, and the birds, those were all part of the original song for Freestyle Friday, but we definitely boosted the river a bit more in this just to add a bit more of that nature, a bit more of that atmosphere that's been present throughout the whole album, and it further helps us take us from happiness into Foo's Flower Shop. So we've got this river, this ambiance, and the birds. We'll go ahead and just start it here and solo it just so you can hear what our whole ambiance section sounds like together. What a nice atmosphere. It's just peaceful. It's light. You want to sit there. It's nice. So that's the idea of the atmosphere. We'll get into our percussives here in a second. Like I said, those came a bit later. So then let's go ahead and start talking about our melodics. So the very first is this initial loop. Now I've got it frozen right now because the RC20 was wreaking havoc on my PC for some reason, but we'll go ahead and just listen to what it sounds like on its own. Very nice, classic kind of loop. You can see the RC20 is on there, and that's mostly automating some warble and some interesting little bits and bobs, stuff that we've talked about. And then the EQ is cleaning up some of the extra frequencies that the RC20 was adding it, with some of our mid frequencies being boosted a little bit more. We've talked about before, because the RC20 adds all kinds of extra textures and things that sometimes are a little too much, makes your mixing a little muddy, and then a limiter as well. And then that's basically doing its whole thing the entire time. You can see there's a couple times where we take it away, but other than that, that's its variation. So next we get into this moon guitar, which I love, and this is me just playing it along using the plugin through Labs. We'll go ahead and just listen to what it sounds like on its own. And it's got a little compression on it, and then the RC20 is in there also adding just some warmth and character to the sound. But I really love it. I love the way that moon guitar sounds, and it interacts with the main loop so well. When you bring both of them in together, you can really hear how nice they play with each other. really nice. And then you bring in this flute, and the flute for me is like, that's like the Samurai Champloo element. You know, I love a flute. I love a flute. I bring a flute into so many different things, but it really has like that lo-fi nature to it. You know, Nujabes has sampled so many different wind sections and things in his music, and so I wanted to bring some of that in there. So let's listen to the flute soloed on its own for a moment. Or maybe. Here we go. Some crunching from my computer, but it's just got a really nice classic sound to it. There's a nice airiness in it. It's a very classic kind of melody. It just takes us through the whole thing. And then when you listen to them with all of our melodics kind of together, you know, this could stand alone. It's just really nice. It's quite peaceful. And then we bring in our drums. So let's talk about our drums, because the drums are comprised of just 2 bits. We have this lo-fi loop. It's a very classic kind of lo-fi loop. I'm sure you've probably heard something very similar to this kind of drum progression in almost every lo-fi song you've listened to. You hear all the like hissing and stuff in there. I mean, that's classic lo-fi. And then similar to lo-fi, and throughout this whole album, I'm a fan of break beats. I love a break beat. That's, you know, like boom bap. That's the 90s kid in me, is break beats. So let's just listen to this break beat on its own. Classic. And then we just bring it in together with the lo-fi loop. And they just blend together to create quite a great, like, that's a good little drum section right there. All right. There's a groove to that, and it just helps push that groove along with our melodics too. It's all simple. We keep it simple in the lo-fi. And then our percussives. Now, this is where a lot of the interesting textures come from, and what really took it from Freestyle Friday to full-fledged track. Now, the biggest thing in here is just listening to all these little bits and bobs. And on their own, they may not sound that impressive. You know, it's just like some claps and things, some like little percussives here and there. We got some more things down here. It's just like, you know, some clicks almost, some little risers and stuff. You know, this is probably our most complicated percussive section the whole time, and it's not even that much. Crazy, right? Super simple. And yeah, so I mean, that's the whole thing with lo-fi. You don't need a lot, but a little spread throughout can really go a long way. So we have this moment that's a little more simpler, and that's kind of like the idea for the thing. But then in our breakdown, you can see that's where most of the percussion is active. You can see when we take away our flute and some of our breakbeat, it's where really all of this percussions come in. And again, it's just little textures, little things here and there. That's a page turning. And then, you know, like us flipping through a book, you know, banging like a spoon against another spoon. Like a lot of these textures and stuff are just kind of like bound sounds. So you can hear that they all interact with each other to create, you know, pretty interesting noise. I like them together. And then when you bring in sort of our drums, and you listen to just sort of what the drums and the percussives do together, you can really hear the interplay with the 2 bits. You see how they fall on those beats, and they just add an extra little layer to those hits. You know, it adds something else that isn't there every single time. Little ear candy. And that's like a mixture of dropping some chimes on a table. There's like some Foley noises and things in there. You know, just all kinds of stuff. Like I'm pretty sure one of those is a water bottle getting crunched up. You can really take inspiration from anything that is around you. And that's it. Like we said, it's a simple track, but it's effective. So we'll just listen to sort of our kind of outro moment where you can hear all of the different percussives and everything together. And this will take us through the end of the song. You see, we get rid of all those textures at the end to just take us back to this initial kit, and it's all about returning to a sense of familiarity. Just that little trickle at the end. I love that little trickle. So that was Foo's Flower Shop, a great lo-fi, Nujabes-inspired track with sprinklings of Samurai Champloo and just happiness and joy throughout the whole thing. We got a few more of these left before we get to the end of the album, so keep it locked in here for more. Keep listening to the album and sharing it with your friends, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.